Let's talk about America's true monsters. With the release of Fallout Season 2, I figured it's only fitting to do a video exposing some of the secrets about the Enclave. In this video, I will be going over the Enclave's history and Fallout. You're going to learn about some very important people involved, what their plans were before the bombs fell, how they've been defeated and still managed to come back, and what their appearance in the Fallout series means for the future of Fallout. Disclaimer, I will be talking about spoilers from Fallout Season 2, so if you're late to the party, no shame, but you should probably stop watching. Without further ado, let's talk Enclave. I want to start with some history regarding the Enclave, because trust me, if you don't know it, it's some pretty fascinating stuff. So for starters, in case you don't know, the Enclave is a secretive faction that haunts the wasteland, deep in the crevices of a post-apocalyptic world. They're the main antagonists in Fallout 2 and 3, and make a slight comeback in Fallout 4 through the Creation Club add-ons. These add-ons were actually set to enable by default after the next-gen update. Of course, the Enclave isn't a joinable faction in those games, but you can join their faction in Fallout 76. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about the Enclave is because of their presence in the Fallout series. We see tiny glimpses of them in Season 1 with Ben Linus, Siggy Wilzig, and you see some of their organization experimenting on dogs, super mutants, and as we're all sure, many other things. They are what we consider the post-war American government. You heard it. After the bombs dropped, they turned more towards the fascist paramilitary type than what we would normally think of the US government being. Have you ever heard of conspiracies of the deep state? Well, yeah, that's them. So it's safe to say the Enclave has some real-life, real-working examples to work from. Before the Great War, no one even knew about the Enclave, and it was filled with high-ranking government officials, presidents, members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, scientists, military members, and wealthy industrialists. That is a massive secret to be kept. And their bad stuff didn't even start after the war. They covered up alien life, and those assholes only did this to study alien tech and munitions for their own benefit. An organization called Quarverum, don't know how to pronounce that, but even they tried exposing them, and guess what happened to them? That's right, they were killed. And they started utilizing bioweapons before the war. We see in Season 1 Coop is faced with a Deathclaw during his time in the Sino-American War. These guys were so schemy with their way, Robert House didn't even know who they were. The Fallout Wiki describes them as a unified, widespread, conspiratorial, extra-political continuation of the US government. God dang, that's a mouthful. What I found absolutely astonishing about the Enclave is even post-war, their main slogan was still, "God bless America." Yet they seized power in some of the most authoritarian ways possible. They were straight up gangster with their executions, and I mean that in the literal sense. They literally executed non-Enclave government officials who survived the initial bombs. More on that later. Now, from what we've seen so far, it's looking pretty likely the Enclave dropped the bombs. However, we still don't know that for sure because as the resource wars were going on, the threat of nuclear annihilation became real clear. Like, that alone is still a contender for the reasons behind the Great War. Or a real sneaky cover-up. Regardless, the Enclave was prepared. The Enclave invested into a ton of contingency plans. This, of course, was funded by corporate and government money. So maybe it wasn't just a coup to start the war. It was also our damn tax dollars. Anyway, these contingencies set up really nice, cozy installations such as the Poseidon oil rig, funded of course by Poseidon Energy. They also set up some hubs for future Enclave operations like the White Spring Congressional Bunker. This bad boy was all done by ye old Thomas Eckhart through embezzlement. My favorite way to fund things. They also had hubs at Raven Rock and Kovac Muldoon platform. We find out in Season 2 the Enclave is Vault-Tech's biggest funder. This is where the Enclave had the bright idea to implement Project Safehouse, where they did all those crazy experiments on Vault Dwellers. And in Season 2 we are shown how they also implement management vaults, No experiments there, or at least not on management. I don't think. I don't know. Maybe. This is where we start getting into what is known as Phase 2. We see Phase 2 being initiated in the last episode of Season 2. What does that fully entail? No clue. But we do know the FEV, or Forced Evolutionary Virus, is supposed to be released into Vaults 32 and 33. I don't know. In my opinion, I don't even think Phase 2 will actually go into effect. Phase 2 was only meant to be implemented once all competitors on the surface were wiped out. And as we know, they still got some competition. Phase 2 was only initiated because Stephanie was backed into a corner after being outed as Canadian. Although it would be pretty sick to see them all turn into super mutants or something. Also, fun fact, before we continue with the Enclave, the Vault's experiments were meant to be data collection to be able to see how the Enclave could build a badass spaceship to inhabit another planet. Apparently Earth isn't good enough for them. So in March of 2077, it's pretty apparent that world is coming to an end. So much so, the Enclave started to initiate their plans of retreating to their various hubs and bunkers. Remember back to Season 1 when Coop is at that birthday party, literally right before it all went nuclear. We hear on the radio of the president still being missing. You got that right, Mr. Krabs is sleeping nice and cozy on the Poseidon oil rig. All other officials are either on the rig or in the congressional bunker or Raven Rock or whatever, just waiting. Remember, at this point it's a matter of when, not if. Actually, right before this happened, there has been some subtle leaks of the Enclave's existence. That's right, people of our great nation started to finally wake up and see the true horrors that were running their lives. Just kidding. These leaks were extremely vague and never really gained any traction. There was only one documented news story and it was published in Boston just 1 week before the Great War. Just because it wasn't popular in the public's eye doesn't mean people weren't still trying to stop them. There are numerous accounts of people within the government as well as outside the government trying to uncover the Enclave's secrets. The only way someone could ever join the Enclave was to be invited to the Enclave. That's why there was a large portion of the government that didn't have a single clue of what was going on. One example is Senator Sam Blackwell. This dude straight up started an investigation into the Congressional Bunker Project as well as Vault-Tech's involvement. However, Blackwell was rudely interrupted by yours truly, Thomas Eckhart. This made Blackwell freak out and get all scared, mostly because he wanted to protect his daughter's life. He went into hiding. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of this fool Thomas Eckhart a little more. Before the war, he was the Secretary of Agriculture. After the war, he became the president of the Appalachian Enclave. When the bombs fell, everyone scattered around and attempted to get to their designated hub. Some people made it, others didn't. Some people got booted before the bombs ever fell and never got the chance. There were a ton of non-Enclave members that made it to the congressional bunker and were swiftly executed upon arrival. Oh, but it only starts there. All the Enclave members had to vote. This vote was to determine if we should keep bombing China or if we should oppose Eckhart. Basically, everyone who opposed Eckhart were placed in a room and gassed. You heard that right, straight up gassed. And believe it or not, Eckhart defied the Enclave. Not in a brave, oh hey, maybe we shouldn't terrorize the wasteland kind of way. See, immediately after the bombings, basically all communication between the Enclave got broken up. So Eckhart had no communication with the oil rig, Raven Rock, or any other Enclave hub. Naturally, like any sane man, Eckhart decided that he would be the president of the Enclave. Originally, he was simply ordered to take control over scientific missions. Instead, this dude wanted to just keep nuking China. See, Eckhart had a full-blown plan to use Appalachia's missile silos to keep attacking China. He really wanted to make sure the Enclave had zero competition. The main problem came from Appalachia's missile silos being automated and needing a reason to automate a strike. The only way to do this was to fake an attack on Appalachia. So why not do a real attack? Eckhart unleashed Liberators, Super Mutants, and Scorch Beasts, almost completely wiping out all of Appalachia. The rest of the Enclave thought this was no bueno, so a bunch of Enclave members rallied around General Ellen Santiago, and a full-on Enclave civil war broke out. This ended with the death of every single member of the Appalachian Enclave. This all went down in 2086. The only real survivor was Modus. We see in Fallout 76 Modus attempting to recruit a certain vault dweller. We then start on the events taking place during Fallout 2. See, the Enclave sees themselves as the only pure species left on the planet. In the year 2140, the Enclave decided mutants, which means literally every living, breathing thing on the planet that isn't them, is a threat to their existence. Over 100 years later, in 2241, President Dick Richardson of the Enclave decided it was time to release FEV-Krillin-13. This is a version of the forced evolutionary virus that kills anything with a mutation. Now, I'm not going to get into the deep dive of what takes place during Fallout 2, since I'm assuming most of you have either played it or have already learned about the history. I will eventually put out videos explaining what happens in Fallout 2 and what happens behind what the player character actually gets to witness. But for now, we'll briefly go through the events leading up to Fallout series. So as you know, the Chosen One blows the crap out of the oil rig, seemingly wiping out the existence of the Enclave. However, we now know that to be false. After the total devastation of the Poseidon oil rig, members of the Enclave retreated to Raven Rock. However, some other survivors set up shop in New California as well as the Navarro. In the year 2242, the new president of the Enclave, John Henry Eden, ordered the majority of the remaining Enclave forces to the good old capital wasteland. This is where, of course, the events of Fallout 3 take place. Those that stayed in New California got raided by the NCR. The NCR was the winner of this battle and left that hub of the Enclave in ruins. Those that survived either headed towards the capital wasteland or tried integrating with the NCR. The events later on led towards the war for Project Purity. As most of you know, the Brotherhood of Steel used Liberty Prime to straight up ruin those fools. This, of course, takes us to 2281 during the events of Fallout New Vegas. Members of the Enclave here are basically gone, with only a few survivors, either tried for their war crimes or have successfully integrated into the NCR, which was pretty rare. In Fallout 4, after the Next Gen update, we get to see remnants of the Enclave. I believe this is made to let us know the Enclave is going to start making a pretty big impact, especially since we see them as the primary threat at the end of Fallout Season 2. In Season 2, we find out sometime between 2281 and 2296, the Enclave was responsible for the Death Claws invading the Las Vegas Strip. After the events of Season 2, we see that the Enclave is clearly located in the mountains of Colorado, so obviously Season 3 will take place there. Now, as far as what's going to happen next, I personally don't believe Phase 2 will be fully initiated. I think because Stephanie was backed into a corner, she felt that was the only way for her to get out of her situation. However, like I previously stated, it would be pretty neat to see everyone in that vault turn into a super mutant. Now, as far as the Enclave goes, I really don't think their presence is going to be hugely shown. In fact, I don't want them to. I want it to be a slow burn to show their true power. I just think we're going to see a lot more of them. I think there's a possibility for some brief wars between the Enclave and soon-to-be-known Colorado factions, and maybe some super mutants making their entrance. Hell, maybe we'll get another Frank Horrigan. Not likely, but maybe. Video on that dude later. But I do believe their threat will be subtle. We know Todd stated Fallout 5 will take place during and after the events of the Fallout series. Here's my thought process. Season 3 will take place in Colorado, but the Fallout series is basically confirmed to have a total of 6 seasons. I highly doubt the last 4 seasons are going to take place in Colorado. My number one contender for Fallout 5's location will be Chicago, Illinois. Yes, you heard that right. Now here's why I think this. The Enclave already has a confirmed presence there. This is shown in Fallout 2. We see in an Enclave terminal they mention Chicago as an active Enclave outpost. Plus, in terms of game building, Chicago is a completely blank slate. There hasn't been any exploration into Chicago at all in the Fallout universe. Bethesda would love this. I also think that this is the perfect setting for a video game. You're basically getting the Midwest, but better than Tactics. The player gets to experience urban ruins, suburbs turned raider territory, industrial wastelands, Great Lakes coastlines, and so much more. That's why Boston worked so well in Fallout 4. And finally, this would truly bridge the gap between the East Coast and the West Coast in the gameplay universe, canonically anyway. Well folks, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed learning this much about the Enclave. I truly had a blast researching this. I just love learning about tiny details or hidden knowledge that the video game doesn't really get to explore as much as the main storyline. If you enjoyed anything or learned anything about this video, please like and subscribe and push that notification icon. I upload twice a week just for you, my sweet, sweet fans. And if you know anything else interesting, let me know down in the comments. I always want to learn. I also want to know your thoughts on Fallout 5 locations. Do you have anything different in mind? Did something else come up? Was it already confirmed and I just didn't freaking know about it? And until next time, I love you.